Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today I'll be doing a review of the brand new Mortal Kombat movie that is now out in theaters and online on HBO Max. And just to give a little bit of a background on my own history with Mortal Kombat, I've always been a huge fan of the 1990s original Mortal Kombat movie. It just is so fun and campy and it's just an enjoyable experience all around, not because it's the best made movie in the world, but just because it's a lot of fun. All the movies that came after that were set around the same time period really weren't all that great, though they definitely have some pretty hilarious moments in them, and obviously I don't think that they had intended them to be that way, though I'm sure the camp was meant to be there. I don't think they thought that the film would have been so bad that it would be good. In this case, we have a much more, I would say, serious take on the Mortal Kombat franchise, and even though I myself have never been a huge part of the gaming world, right? Obviously, this is based off of the video game Mortal Kombat. I played that a little bit when I was younger. You know, I had the N64 and would play a couple of the Mortal Kombats, but it was enough to where I don't remember the actual number of the Mortal Kombat game that I played. I don't have a full knowledge of all of the rich history of characters. There are characters that I can recognize either from the film or from playing the games and everything like that. But in the end, it was mostly just very limited in my playing of it. And then, of course, arcades would have the old school arcade game where you could fight people in that, back and forth set as well. And so that's kind of my limited knowledge with this. So there's a little bit of background on me before going into my review of the movie, because some people, I think, will have different views on this movie depending on how much or how little they know about the overall franchise. What I can say is that Mortal Kombat's kind of all over the place. This movie is something that I think has some really good things going forward. It has some not so good things going forward. And then it has some things that, in the end, I can't really determine whether they're good or bad. I think depending on the day, I could change my mind on it. But let's just start off with some of the good things that overall I enjoyed about the movie. I will say that one thing that I actually enjoyed a lot was just how it took itself seriously, but it also didn't take itself that seriously. The biggest strength that I think this movie has is that it really seems to care a lot about fan service. So they have a lot of characters that they make reference to and that they bring into the movie that had not been, at least from my remembrance, in previous iterations of the movie, or rather previous iterations of the franchise in movies. And so I thought that was pretty cool for them to bring in those types of characters. There are characters that have been in previous Mortal Kombat movies, but there were others that I don't quite remember having been in there. So I liked, again, the fact that they had these references. There were several video game references. There's the concept of things like flawless victory. You have a lot of blood and gore in the deaths of a lot of the characters as they go through the film as well. So I think anyone who's a big fan of the original, I would say probably more so the video game franchise, will probably find a lot of moments in this movie that they'll be able to gravitate to and actually thoroughly enjoy because of the pure just fan service aspect to it. But in the end, I think, honestly, that is the really only big strength that this movie has, because everything else either falls into it not being that great or being a bit of a mixed bag. So, for instance, the acting. There's some really good acting in the movie, and then there's some not so very good acting in the movie. What I can say is that by far the best character and the best performance in this movie is the character of Kano, played by Josh Lawson. I thought that anyone who's seeing this film, and from what I've gathered from the little reviews that I've seen from it, almost everyone universally says Kano is the best part of this movie, and I have to totally agree with them. Kano is lightning in a bottle. Every single line he has is hysterical. He is the comedic relief of the film. He's also pretty badass as well. And so you have just this character who's kind of alone in this world where there's really nothing weak about his character overall, which I was actually very fond of actually seeing. So kudos to Josh Lawson for playing that character. I really didn't know or recognize him from other movies, and that is also kind of the other thing where it's mixed bag, because a lot of the actors in this movie I really don't have a lot of memory with. The only one that I even somewhat recognized was actually the guy who played Scorpion, and it's interesting the storyline they had with that. The opening scene, to me, the opening 7 minutes, which they released online, honestly may have been some of the best parts of the movie, at least for me, because I very much liked the like samurai ninja aspect that they had. There was a really cool fight sequence, really good and cool fight choreography, but also because it featured that actor whose name escapes me. I'm sure I can find it down here in the list. It's the Hiroyuki Sanada. So this is the actor that I had recognized. So if you see him, you're like, oh wait, I've totally seen him and stuff before. He was the only actor that really for me I had any real memory of, and I thought his portrayal in the very beginning when he was just Hanzo Hasashi was really cool. And then of course when he eventually turns into Scorpion and names himself Scorpion, that also is pretty cool as well. And just so you know, there will be some, I guess, spoilers, so if you're trying to avoid any spoilers whatsoever as far as the movie and the characters and things like that, you may want to maybe not watch the rest of the movie overall. And I'm sorry if what I've said so far constitutes a spoiler, but to me that's just kind of basic elements of the plot. And it's hard to talk about movies in general without giving away what some people deem to be spoilers. To me, a spoiler is when there's a major twist that happens in a movie that people don't know about or would never have seen happen, and then someone exposes that. Talking about basic plot points and things like that, to me, just don't really fall into that overall category. It is interesting that James Wan actually produced this movie, or at least was one of the producers behind it. So he's been known for being a part of the Saw franchise, Insidious, and I believe also James Wan, I believe, was one of the minds behind Aquaman as well. So because of his involvement in it, I think that's the reason why, for the most part, the CGI, so again, another one of those mixed bag things. Some of the CGI looked pretty good, especially when they did some of the deaths mixed with real life. But then there was other CGI that just didn't look very good at all. I mean, there was one character, and again, I don't know the character's name, and this is where my limited knowledge comes in, who was essentially like this winged demon-looking girl, and that CGI just didn't really hold up or look very well. You also, of course, had another appearance by a character who has been previous in other films, and that is Prince Goro. And Prince Goro, I think it's always kind of hard to get that character right because he's supposed to be a big, giant, kind of humanoid creature with several arms. But I think I actually prefer the really bad movie from the 1990s where it was all practical effects more, because as you all know, I'm usually a much bigger fan of practical effects when they can be used. But he was completely CGI in this movie, and I thought that for the most part, it just didn't really look all that good. Some really cool effects, though, are, I think, the fire effects. So you had some really cool fire effects, especially from the character of Liu Kang. It's really cool to see him being able to have that from the very beginning, right? In the old 1990s movie, he's learning and developing and figuring out what his, really what his powers are or what his capabilities are. So it's kind of cool to see him already established in this universe. So all the fire scenes with him looked pretty good. And then Sub-Zero. Of course, Sub-Zero is, really the biggest villain and the main villain in the movie, because from the very beginning, from the very outset, it's Sub-Zero, and he consistently is throughout the entire film involved in certain ways. So it is interesting how in a universe that typically, from what I'm used to, would have someone like Shang Tsung be the main villain and obviously he is the leader of this group. Really, it's Sub-Zero's movie, more or less. And the ice effects, going back to CGI, the ice effects with Sub-Zero I thought worked really well and looked pretty awesome. But you also have other characters that show up here. Again, if you don't want to know who's in the movie, who's not in the movie, you may want to avoid this. But Sonya Blade, the actress that played Sonya Blade, she was fine. I mean, it was serviceable. It was one of those things where it wasn't cringeworthy, but it was fine. Kano, as I mentioned, was fantastic. Lord Raiden's in the movie, and I thought the guy that played him was pretty badass, but Raiden actually kind of has a little bit more of a limited role in the movie, and I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from him, I think. Jax is in the movie. Jax has a really awesome one-liner that I think could potentially be a nominee for next year's Wednesday Raven Awards. I think that this movie actually will probably get a little bit more love than people would think from the Raven Awards. If you don't know what that is, it's an award show that I do on this channel, and the nominations for this year's has stopped because the show's going to be tomorrow. But I thought that Jax, for the most part, again, acting-wise, was fine. Liu Kang, he was one where, again, he was definitely Liu Kang and never felt like he was not fit for the part, but you just could tell that the acting just wasn't as strong as it probably could have been from that. Sub-Zero was pretty fantastic. Hiroyuki Sanada, as I said, was fantastic as Hanzo, fantastic as Scorpion. Unfortunately, the character of Scorpion is not in the movie as much. It really doesn't come into play as Scorpion until the very end. And of course, you do have that amazing moment where it's "get over here," which always makes, as I said, there's a lot of fan service elements in the movie, and I think that is absolutely going to be one of them. Kung Lao is in the movie as well. So as I said, that was a character that I hadn't remembered seeing in previous iterations. So it was cool to see that character there. You, of course, have Melina in there as well, and Cabal, which I don't really remember much from the games, the character of Cabal, but I'm sure that some fans of the game might have actually recognized it. One of the really cool things, so this is definitely going to be a spoiler because I know a lot of people have been asking this about why has this character not been mentioned, why have they said this character's not in it, and it is of course about Johnny Cage, but this movie isn't very much, as far as the plot's concerned. That's another one of those things where it's a mixed bag. There's some parts of the story that I like, especially the first part. As I said, it starts off in 17th century Japan, and that whole thing was awesome. I kind of just wish we had stayed there for 30, 45 minutes. Like if half the movie had just been in establishing and building up the character that would eventually have been Scorpion, I think that actually, for me at least, that's the kind of thing that I look to. Those are the qualities of films that I care more about. I care more about that than typical fan service. So I think that actually could have made the story a little bit better. But instead, it goes and jumps around from world to world. It gives you a little bit of the sense of these different characters learning their power. And that part of the story seemed a little bit convoluted as well, where they're having to go basically train with Lord Raiden. And then in the training, because they all have these marks, it means that they will eventually basically develop powers. But that's the reason why having a character like Kano there who kind of was like laughing and just saying, "I hope I get a badass power," it was awesome. So Kano, I think, made that better than what it actually was. I think that if you were to objectively look at the story, it really wasn't all that strong, and they could have done a lot better. The writing, as I said, not very good for this movie, but Kano, I think, kind of saved some scenes that otherwise would have been pretty bland and forgettable. But it leads all the way to the very end of the movie when they establish that this is all in preparation for the actual Mortal Kombat tournament, which does not happen in this movie. Instead, the main characters, or rather the main plot of the movie, is that that they are essentially trying to stop and kill Earthrealm's heroes before they can actually develop their powers before the next Mortal Kombat tournament, because Outworld just needs to defeat them one more time, right? That's been the constant story that's been in all the Mortal Kombat, at least the movies are concerned, right? It's always been kind of in the background. So they're trying to basically defeat them before the actual tournament begins. And so all of this movie is setting up the characters to be ready for that tournament. And then at the very end, you do find out that one of the persons that they're going to be looking for, because they do create, and this was getting some controversy, was they make a new character. So someone who's not in the game, someone that they decide just to create instead, the character of, I think his name's Cole. He has a new journey and a new mission, and that is he's going to Hollywood to find Johnny Cage, and they show a poster with Johnny Cage. So Johnny Cage is going to be brought into this universe, but as you can see, the budget of this film was around $55 million, which, to be honest, it's actually lower than I thought it was going to be, and I'm actually going to excuse some of the effects of this film knowing that it was $55 million. I'm not going to fully excuse them because I've mentioned before there's been movies like Love and Monsters, which is a movie from last year I was a big fan of, which only cost around 30 to 35 million, which did amazing work with the CGI they had. However, in a world like this, when there's things like powers, you're obviously going to need a lot more CGI than you would in Love and Monsters, and so therefore a lot of their budget I could have seen probably being taken up by the level of CGI they had to use. And it also, I think, helps to explain why the actors are, for the most part, nobodies that most people are not going to recognize. And so I can actually kind of excuse that at this point. But in the end, this film, it's a mixed bag of things. I've heard some people say it's terrible. Some people say that they were able to turn their brains off and enjoy it. Here's the thing. Are there really good and fun action sequences in here? Absolutely. Are there fun fights? Absolutely. Are there some pretty cool story elements? I think that they're definitely mixed in there, but I think for the most part, the story definitely is lacking. That's the biggest weakness of this movie overall. Do I think that the characters are there and that there's a lot of fan service given? Absolutely. Do I think this movie is going to make enough money in order to be able to justify a sequel when they actually go into the Mortal Kombat tournament and are able to bring in a character like Johnny Cage? Based on the fact that it was only made for $55 million, I actually think it will. As I said, based on the most current number they have, it's $19.4 million. So this, of course, is the opening weekend, and so I'll have a box office breakdown on this movie either tomorrow or Monday, depending on when those numbers get released, especially the international ones. But it seems to me that this film probably will make enough to be able to make the money back, because at $55 million, it means with budgeting and with marketing, probably $75 to $80 million was the total cost of the film. The movie then just needs to make around, what, $150 to $200 million worldwide to break even. So it even gets close to that number. One could argue that it could have made that up in eventual DVD, Blu-ray, 4K sales, and any other revenue streams that it might actually have. And so with all that being said, again, writing is the worst part of this movie. It's very, very weak. There's fan service to be had here. The effects are sometimes good, sometimes not that great. And overall, though, I did have fun with the movie, but I will say that if Kano was not in the movie, there would be a lot less to be enjoyed for this movie. Even with the other fan service elements in there, Kano was really the only thing that one could say is the heart and soul of the movie, especially with a lot of the bland acting that is surrounding him and the bland storytelling as well. So overall, I'm going to have to give this movie a C+. So again, it's basically it's an average movie for me. It's a movie that, do you have to go out of your way to go see in IMAX? Probably not. There's no woke stuff in there, and so if you want to support movies that don't really push woke agendas, then please feel free to go out there and support a movie like this. But don't get your expectations set too high if you think this is going to be an amazing Mortal Kombat movie. If I had to choose between whether to watch the 90s Mortal Kombat movie or this movie again, I'm going to go back with the 90s, because at least that one knew what it was, embraced the campiness, and was just enjoyable. Plus, Shang Tsung in that movie, the actor that played him, is still so iconic, and it would have been really cool if they were able to bring him back into this universe as well. But of course, he's up there in years, and I know that they just want to have this new era of actors playing these characters. But hey, as long as they, next time for the next movie, as I do think they will have a next movie, if they can just get good writers onto this and actually hash out a good, competent plot, and maybe spend a little less time on using too much CGI in certain areas, especially having any fully CGI characters, and instead maybe work with some practical effects, I think it'd actually be a pretty good beginning to a franchise, even though it is a mediocre start in general for a movie. But anyway, have you seen the new Mortal Kombat film? Let me know in the comments section below. And as I said, there's going to be a lot of opinions on this, because you're going to have people that are hardcore video game fans, you're going to have people that are just hardcore Mortal Kombat universe movie fans, and then you're going to have general fans of action films in general. And I think you're going to see opinions all over the place. But any movie reviewer that I think gives this movie kind of that mid-level, it's okay at certain parts, I think probably would be the ones that are most trustworthy. Anyone that's going to fully praise this movie or fully crap on it, I think is missing, might be missing certain elements of the fan service, or might also be missing, if they're overly praising it, the clear issues that the story has. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about this. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Remember, no live stream tonight. I might do a random live stream over on Odyssey, because I finally have live stream ability over there. So by the time this video is up, who knows when that might be. No live stream tonight. We'll have a live stream tomorrow, because we have the Chosen of Valhalla live stream tomorrow around 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then 6 hours or so after that, we then have the Wednesday Raven Awards, which again, those nominations are now closed. And I'm going to today try and work on some graphics if I can. But as you all know, things have been busy with a day job and, of course, with Baby Thor. But thank you again very much for your love and support. You guys are awesome. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my April Patreon and Subscribe Star members: Andrew Hoyle, Animation Commentator, Biffer the Hobbit, Brian P., Divex, Enrique Evangelista, Dion, Father Christopher Miller, Hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Humor, and Hobbies, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toone, Jonathan Carney, Lance, Laura Story, the Modern Major General, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Steve Glasker, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and of course, the Empress of the Universe, Tina B. And my Subscribe Star Remembers? Subscribe Star I did it again. Subscribe Star members: Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stan 4, John B, Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, Nevanon G. Adams, and ZK Man. Thank you to all of my Patreon and Subscribestar members. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every single video and live stream, check out the links in the description to find out how to sign up on Patreon and Subscribestar. Also, you'll find out how to get access to things like giveaways of Blu-rays and 4K titles and digital codes, and also access to an exclusive podcast for my Keepers of the Bifrost, and also the Chosen of Valhalla level, where you can not only get all of those things, you also get a t-shirt and get to be featured on a live stream once a month hosted on the OMB Reviews channel. Anyway, if you want to have access to any of those things, check out the links in the description for Patreon and Subscribestar for more information. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.